The chamber stretched so far that the opposite wall disappeared into a haze of artificial atmosphere. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the podium marked for Earth's representative, her hands gripping the sides of the smooth alien metal. Above her, arranged in circular tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat the representatives of 47 galactic species. Some had faces she recognized from years of study. Others were so alien that she could barely tell which end was which. This was supposed to be Earth's moment. 20 years of provisional membership in the Galactic Council had led to this day. 20 years of humanity proving itself worthy of joining the elder species among the stars. 20 years of working, building, and contributing to galactic civilization. Elena had prepared a speech. She had statistics ready about human contributions to Council projects. She had testimonials from species who had worked alongside humans. She had documentation of every trade agreement honored, every diplomatic protocol followed, every promise kept. She never got to deliver any of it. The Zrathi hegemon spoke first. His species stood nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline skin that reflected the chamber's lights in sharp angles. His voice boomed through the translation systems built into every seat. We gather today to vote on Earth's petition for full membership. I move that we not only deny this petition but revoke their provisional status entirely. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Elena felt her stomach drop, but kept her face carefully neutral. This was not what the preliminary meetings had suggested. Something had changed. The humans have been adequate workers, the hegemon continued, and Elena caught the dismissive tone even through the translation. They perform tasks that benefit the Council, but full membership? That requires contribution of value, not merely labor. A Velix representative, her scales shimmering blue in agitation, raised a manipulator arm. The humans maintain 70% of our deep space mining operations. They crew the hazardous cargo vessels. They do work that requires no innovation, interrupted the hegemon. Work that requires only a willingness to risk their short lives in environments we find uncomfortable. Any species could do this work. Humans simply accept lower wages for it. Laughter scattered through parts of the chamber. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks but forced herself to breathe slowly. She had been a military officer before becoming a diplomat. She knew how to control her reactions. Another representative stood, this one from the Corthan Combine. Their technology remains primitive by our standards. Fusion drives we mastered 3,000 years ago. Quantum computing we gave to our children as educational toys. They have contributed nothing new to Council databases. Because we restrict what technologies they can access, the Velix representative argued. But her voice lacked conviction. She was not willing to fight hard for Earth's cause. Elena requested permission to speak. The hegemon looked at her for a long moment, then granted it with a gesture that seemed deliberately condescending. Members of the Council, Elena began, keeping her voice steady. Humanity has honored every agreement made with this body. We have asked for nothing but the opportunity to prove ourselves. We have worked in radiation zones that would kill most species within hours. We have transported materials so dangerous that insurance companies refuse to cover other species who handle them. We have maintained infrastructure in nebulae where sensor equipment fails and navigation is nearly impossible. We have done this work not because it is beneath others, but because we believed it would earn us a place among you. And so it has, the hegemon said, a place as workers, as laborers, as the janitors of the galaxy, cleaning up messes and doing tasks others find unpleasant. This is valuable, human, but it is not the contribution of a council species. It is the contribution of a servant species. The word hung in the air like poison. Servant species. Elena saw it now, the trap that had been laid over decades. Humanity had been so eager to help, so willing to take on any task offered, that they had locked themselves into a role. And now that role was being used to define them forever. I move that we place Earth under technological guardianship, the hegemon continued. We restrict their access to certain technologies permanently. We impose a 40% tariff on all their trade to fund council oversight. We require inspection teams on all human worlds to ensure compliance with council regulations. And we do this for their own good, because clearly they are not ready to govern themselves responsibly in galactic affairs. This is not what was discussed in preliminary sessions, Elena said, not bothering to hide her anger now. This is a violation of every understanding we have built over 20 years. Understandings change, the hegemon replied. We have observed humanity carefully. You are useful, but you are also ambitious beyond your capabilities. You take risks that endanger not just yourselves but others. You need guidance, structure, control. Elena looked around the chamber. Some species looked uncomfortable. A few looked sympathetic, but none looked willing to stand against the hegemon and his bloc. The math was simple and brutal. The Zarathi controlled too much trade, held too much influence, commanded too much military might. Going against them meant consequences most species were not willing to face. I warn this council, Elena said quietly, that you are making a terrible mistake. More laughter. The hegemon smiled, showing teeth like glass shards. Is that a threat, little human? Does Earth think it can stand against the combined might of the council? You could not survive a week without our trade, our technology, our protection. It is not a threat, Elena said. It is a statement of fact. You will regret this decision. The vote was called. Elena watched the displays light up around the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. The greens outnumbered the reds by more than 3-1. The measure passed. Earth was not just denied full membership. It was reduced to something less than provisional status. It was made subordinate. Elena was given 30 days to return to Earth and bring back a signed agreement to the new terms. The Earth Compliance Accords, they called it. A document that would lock humanity into permanent second-class status. A document that would make Earth's relationship with the Council more like master and servant than partners. She left the chamber in silence. No species tried to speak with her. A few looked away as she passed. The Velix representative caught her eye and gave a small gesture that might have been apology or sympathy. Elena nodded back but said nothing. In her private quarters on the council station, Elena sat at her desk and looked at the communication array. It was a beautiful piece of technology, capable of sending messages across half the galaxy instantaneously. The Council had given it to Earth as a gift when humanity first achieved provisional status, a symbol of welcome and partnership. Elena thought about that now, about how naive they had been, how eager to believe they were wanted, how willing to accept any terms just to be included. She activated the array using a frequency that was not in any official records. A frequency that Earth's military had set up years ago just in case. Just in case things went wrong. Just in case the galaxy was not as friendly as it pretended to be. The connection was secure, encrypted with algorithms the Council did not know humans had developed. On the other end, someone answered immediately. They had been waiting. Elena took a breath and spoke 3 words that would change everything. 3 words that had been prepared years ago as a contingency that everyone hoped would never be needed. Protocol Exodus. Execute immediately. Then she closed the connection and sat back in her chair. Around her, the council station continued its normal operations. Ships came and went. Species traded and talked and lived their lives. None of them knew what had just been set in motion. None of them knew that humanity had been preparing for this possibility since the very first day they encountered the council. None of them knew that the humble workers, the risk-taking laborers, the servants of the galaxy had been planning and building and learning in secret. The countdown had begun. In 30 days, the Council would expect Earth to sign its surrender. Instead, in 72 hours, they would learn what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Elena allowed herself a small, cold smile. They had called humans janitors. They were about to learn that janitors see everything, go everywhere, and know all the secrets of the places they clean. And humanity had been cleaning the galaxy's house for 20 years. The first ship to disappear was the cargo hauler Destiny's Path, operating in the Krenak sector. It had been carrying refined antimatter for the Zrathi industrial complex on Praxis 4. The ship simply stopped responding to communications mid-route. Search vessels found nothing. No debris field. No distress beacon. No trace of a crew of 43 humans. Within 6 hours, reports started flooding into Council monitoring stations. Human vessels were vanishing across the galaxy. Not destroyed, not attacked, just gone. They would arrive at a station, dock, refuel, and then instead of continuing their routes, they would file departure plans for empty space and disappear into the dark. The Council's initial response was confusion, mixed with irritation. A few officials suggested technical problems. Perhaps some fault in human navigation systems was causing ships to misjump. Search parties were organized for the larger vessels. Insurance adjusters began calculating losses. By the second day, confusion turned to concern. It was not just ships. Human workers were disappearing from installations across known space. Mining platforms in the Vor Nebula reported that their entire human staff had boarded shuttlecraft and departed during the night cycle. When supervisors tried to stop them, the humans simply said they were leaving and walked out. No violence, no theft. They just left. A Corthan industrial station manager tried to block the exits when his human technicians announced they were quitting. All 40 of them at once. They had looked at him with expressions he could not read and told him he had 10 minutes to move aside before they moved him. He had called security. Security arrived to find the manager sitting on the floor, dazed but unharmed, and the humans gone. They had taken a shuttle that by rights should not have been able to fly. Its engines had been marked for maintenance, but the humans had made it work anyway, and vanished into the dark. The pattern repeated across hundreds of worlds and thousands of stations. Anywhere humans worked, they simply left. No explanations, no negotiations, no demands. They just walked away from jobs that some of them had held for years. The council called an emergency session on the second day. The hegemon stood at the central podium, his crystalline skin reflecting the emergency lights that bathed the chamber in harsh white illumination. "This is clearly a coordinated action," he declared. "The humans are attempting to leverage their labor to overturn the council's decision. It is crude blackmail, nothing more. Let them go. We can replace their labor within weeks." A Velix engineer stood. "Replace them with whom? My people will not work in radioactive environments without protection that costs more than the operation's profit." The Corthan refused to handle unstable materials. "Your own Zrathi workers demand hazard pay that makes most operations economically impossible. Then we automate," the hegemon snapped. "Automation fails in those environments. That is why we used humans in the first place. The radiation and exotic particles interfere with AI systems and robotic controls. We need beings capable of independent thought and action in those conditions. Beings who can adapt to rapid changes. Beings who do not mind," she paused, "risk." The hegemon waved a dismissive hand. "This crisis will pass. The humans will realize they have nowhere to go. They need our technology, our markets, our protection. They will come back on their knees, and we will accept them back on even stricter terms." But the crisis did not pass. By the third day, systems began failing across the galaxy. On the Zrathi homeworld of Zrath Prime, power fluctuations started in the southern continent. The massive fusion reactors that powered the industrial sectors began showing anomalous readings. Technicians rushed to diagnose the problem and found that maintenance protocols had not been properly followed for weeks. The human crews who normally serviced the cores had been doing their jobs, but they had not been training Zrathi replacements as thoroughly as everyone assumed. The Zrathi technicians who tried to take over the work found themselves facing systems more complex than they had imagined. The humans had made it look easy. They had gone into radiation levels that required full protective gear, had worked in temperatures that would cook most species, had handled materials that could explode if mishandled by even a small degree. How did they do this? A Zrathi engineer asked, staring at a readout that showed radiation levels 10 times what safety regulations permitted for his species. How did they survive in these conditions? No one had an answer. The humans had just done the work, year after year, and no one had bothered to ask how difficult it actually was. Trade routes started closing on the third day. The passage through the Charing Void, a region of space filled with unstable gravity wells and radiation storms, had been navigable only because human pilots had mapped it, and human ships had been tough enough to survive it. Now that route was empty. Trade between the inner and outer sectors that normally flowed through the void had to take longer routes that added weeks to journey times and enormous costs to shipping. Other routes followed. The human ships that had carried dangerous cargoes through hazardous space were gone, and no one else wanted those jobs. The pay had not been good enough when humans were doing it. Now the pay would have to increase dramatically to attract non-human crews, and even then, there were no ships built to the specifications needed for that work. On the fourth day, the first industrial accident occurred. A Corthan refinery that processed exotic matter lost containment on a storage vessel. The human safety supervisor who normally monitored the systems was gone. The Corthan replacement had not understood the warning signs. 23 workers died in the explosion and the facility was destroyed. The council called another emergency session. This time the chamber was not filled with confident voices. This time there was fear. "We cannot contact them," a junior official reported. "We have sent messages to every known human frequency, to Earth itself, to their colonies, to their ships. We receive no response." "What about the ambassador?" someone asked. "Where is Vasquez?" "She remains in her quarters on this station. We have asked for a meeting. She has declined." The hegemon stood, and for the first time his voice held uncertainty. "Break down her door. Bring her here." "We tried," the official said quietly. "Her quarters are locked with human security systems we cannot override without destroying the entire section. And she has made it clear that any attempt to breach her door will be considered an act of war." Silence filled the chamber. "An act of war?" the hegemon repeated. "She cannot be serious. Earth has no military that could threaten even one council member, let alone the entire council." A new voice spoke up. It came from the intelligence division, a Threx analyst who had been studying Earth for years. "We may have made an error in our assessment," the analyst said. His voice was steady, but his scales showed colors of distress. "We are detecting unusual energy signatures from the Sol system." "Very unusual. What kind of signatures?" the hegemon demanded. "Massive ones. Power generation on a scale we did not think Earth possessed. And something else. Shipyard activity. A great deal of shipyard activity. More than our projections suggested was possible." "Show me." The holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. It showed the Sol system, Earth's home, but it did not look like the reports from even 6 months ago. There were structures that had not been there. Enormous structures orbiting the outer planets and dots. Thousands of dots that the system identified as ships. "This cannot be accurate," the hegemon said. "This shows thousands of military vessels." "Earth does not have thousands of military vessels. They have barely 100, and those are outdated designs. The data comes from 3 independent sources," the analyst said. "A Velix journalist reached the edge of human space with long-range sensors. Our intelligence probes confirm her readings, and we are receiving similar reports from every border adjacent to human territory. They have been building, hegemon. Building for years. And we never noticed." The chamber erupted into noise. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, all expressing shock, fear, and anger. How had this happened? How had humanity built a fleet without council knowledge? What else had they hidden? The hegemon's voice cut through the chaos. "This changes nothing. Even with a fleet, Earth cannot stand against the council. We have thousands of years of military experience. We have weapons they cannot match. If they want war, we will crush them." But his voice lacked its earlier certainty, and across the chamber, representatives were beginning to realize an uncomfortable truth. Humanity had spent 20 years working in the most dangerous, most sensitive, most critical positions across the galaxy. They had maintained the systems that everyone else found too difficult or too risky. They had transported the materials that everyone else feared to touch. They had gone places no other species wanted to go, and they had been watching, learning, studying. While everyone else saw servants and janitors, humanity had been gathering knowledge that no single species possessed. They had seen how Zrathi fusion cores worked, how Corthan antimatter was processed, how Velix ships navigated impossible space, how every species in the Council operated their most advanced and most dangerous technologies. Humanity had not been serving the Council. They had been infiltrating it, and now they were gone, and the galaxy was beginning to understand what it had lost. The Velix journalist's name was Shirix, and she had made her career on finding stories others missed. She had been investigating human activities for months before the Council vote, following a hunch that something did not add up. Humans were too willing to accept dangerous work, too quick to volunteer for assignments in regions where sensors failed and communications were unreliable, too comfortable in places that terrified other species. She had chartered a small, fast ship and headed for the outer boundaries of human space. She wanted to see what Earth was doing in the regions beyond Council monitoring. What she found made her blood run cold, even though her species did not feel cold the way humans did. The broadcast she sent back to the Council networks showed images that seemed impossible. Shipyards, massive orbital construction facilities around Jupiter, Saturn, even in the asteroid belt. But these were not the modest shipyards that Earth had shown to Council inspectors. These were military-industrial complexes on a scale that rivaled the oldest Council species, and ships. Thousands of them, warships ranging from small destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Zrathi fleet. They had a brutal, functional look to them, no artistic curves or aesthetic considerations. These were machines built for one purpose, and that purpose was violence. I do not understand how they built this without us knowing. Shirik spoke into her recording device, her voice shaking. The resources alone should have shown up on trade monitoring. The power generation needed for construction on this scale should have been visible from light years away. But I am looking at it now, and the council had no idea. No idea at all. Her broadcast reached the council within hours. Emergency meetings were called. Intelligence agencies scrambled to verify her findings. And every verification came back the same. It was real. All of it. A special session convened in the council chambers. The hegemon was no longer alone at the central podium. He was joined by military advisors, intelligence officials, and representatives from the major powers. The holographic display showed Shirix's footage on repeat, and each time it played, the silence grew deeper. "We need to understand how this happened," a Korthan military commander said. Her voice was clipped, professional, hiding the fear that her scent glands betrayed. Earth should not have the resources for this. They should not have the knowledge. They should not have the industrial capacity. But they do, the Threx intelligence analyst said. He had been working without sleep for 3 days, compiling reports that painted a picture none of them wanted to see. And I believe I understand how. He activated his own presentation. 20 years ago, humanity made first contact with the Council. We assessed them as technologically inferior but useful for dangerous work. We offered them provisional membership in exchange for labor contracts. We thought we were exploiting them. We were wrong. The display showed statistics, personnel placements across the galaxy, humans working on Zrathi fusion cores, humans transporting Korthan antimatter, humans maintaining Velix navigation systems, humans processing exotic matter for a dozen other species, humans everywhere, in every critical system, doing work that required access to the most advanced and dangerous technologies in the galaxy. They were not just working, the analyst continued. They were learning. Every human who maintained a fusion core learned how it operated. Every human who transported antimatter learned how it was contained and processed. Every human who navigated hazardous space learned techniques we considered trade secrets. We gave them access to everything because we thought the work was beneath us. They stole our technology, the hegemon said, his voice sharp with anger. No, the analyst replied. They learned it. There is a difference. They did not take our designs. They studied our principles. And then they applied those principles in ways we never considered. Look at their ships. The display zoomed in on one of the human dreadnoughts. That armor is not stolen Zrathi technology, but it uses the same radiation-resistant principles that Zrathi fusion cores use, principles that humans learned by working in those cores for 20 years. The shields are not copied Velix designs, but they apply the same exotic particle manipulation that humans learned by transporting hazardous materials through space that destroys electronic systems. He switched to another image. Their weapons are not stolen from any species, but they combine elements from dozens of different technologies, elements that no single species would put together because we all specialize. We all have our own approaches, our own philosophies of engineering. Humans had no philosophy. They just took what worked from everyone and built something new. How did they hide this? Someone asked. Construction on this scale requires resources, materials, energy. Where did it come from? From us, the analyst said quietly. Look at the resource records. Humans transported huge quantities of materials through hazardous space, materials that we assumed were going to human colonies or human industries. We never inspected those shipments carefully because why would we? They were going through space that killed our sensors and made monitoring impossible. They were being carried by humans, who we trusted to do the job because we did not want to do it ourselves. They were stealing? No. They were transporting exactly what they contracted to transport. But they were also transporting additional materials in the same ships. Materials they mined from regions we could not access. Asteroids in radiation zones, gas giants with magnetic fields that destroy electronic equipment, nebulae where conventional ships cannot operate. They went places we could not go, and they took resources we could not claim, and they built a fleet we never imagined they could build. The chamber filled with angry voices. Accusations flew. The Zrathi blamed the Korthan for not monitoring their antimatter shipments. The Korthan blamed the Velix for not tracking navigation routes. Everyone blamed the intelligence services for not seeing what was happening, but under the anger was fear. Fear of what humanity had become while they were not looking, fear of what would happen next. The answer came that night. Ambassador Elena Vasquez finally accepted a communication request from the Council. Her face appeared on the holographic display, and every representative saw her at once. She looked tired, but her eyes were hard. "Members of the Council," she said, her voice formal and cold. "I am responding to your request for communication. I will do so once. Listen carefully because I will not repeat myself." The chamber went silent. 20 years ago, humanity came to the Council in friendship. We wanted to join the community of spacefaring species. We wanted to learn, to grow, to contribute. We were naive. We thought that if we worked hard and proved ourselves useful, we would be accepted as equals. She paused, and something like sadness crossed her face. We were wrong. The harder we worked, the more indispensable we became, the less you respected us. You saw us as servants, as laborers, as things to be used and discarded. You made that clear in your vote. So we adapted, while we cleaned your stations and maintained your equipment and did the work you found too dangerous or too demeaning. We learned. We learned how everything worked. We learned your strengths and your weaknesses. We learned how to survive in conditions that would kill you. And we prepared for the day when you would reveal your true intentions. That day came. You voted to make us subordinate, to control us, to keep us as permanent servants. Thank you for that. You clarified the situation wonderfully. The hegemon leaned forward. What do you want, human? Money, better terms? A reversal of the vote? Name your price and stop this theater. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. What do we want? We want nothing from you. Not anymore. Earth is withdrawing from the Council, effective immediately. We are ending all contracts, all agreements, all arrangements. We are recalling all human citizens from Council space. And we are declaring ourselves a sovereign power that owes you nothing. You cannot survive without our trade, the hegemon said, but his voice lacked conviction. We can. We have been preparing for this for 20 years. We have colonies and systems you did not know we could reach. We have resources from regions you cannot access. We have technologies you did not know we possessed. We do not need you. But you need us, and that brings me to the reason for this communication. She stood, and behind her, the image changed to show a star chart. Marked on it were 50 locations across the galaxy. Human ships are currently positioned at each of these locations. These are critical infrastructure points, resource hubs, trade nexuses, systems that you need and that we used to maintain. We are now holding these positions, not attacking them, not destroying them, just holding them. You will withdraw from our territory, the hegemon demanded. These are not your territories. These are unclaimed systems or systems in disputed space. We claimed them 3 days ago. They are human territory now. And here is what happens next. You have 72 hours to withdraw all sanctions against Earth. You will grant us full sovereignty with no oversight. You will renegotiate all trade agreements as equals, not as master and servant. And you will do this because if you do not, we will keep these systems, and your economy will collapse. This is blackmail, someone shouted. Yes, Elena agreed calmly. It is, just as your vote was blackmail. The Zrathi hegemon did not sleep that night. He stood in his private quarters aboard the Council station, watching the star charts that showed human ships holding 50 critical positions across the galaxy. Each ship was a dagger aimed at the heart of galactic civilization. Each one represented a choke point that, if closed, would cripple trade and industry. But there was one location that gnawed at him more than the others. His homeworld, Zrath Prime. The human ships had not moved there, not yet. But intelligence reports showed human vessels massing near the system's edge, in a region of space filled with radiation that made tracking them difficult. He had called a meeting of his military advisors. They stood before him now, their crystalline bodies reflecting the harsh emergency lighting that never seemed to turn off anymore. Can we take them? He asked bluntly. If we commit our full fleet, can we remove the humans from those positions? The senior admiral was an old warrior who had fought in 3 major conflicts. She had survived battles that had destroyed entire fleets. She met the hegemon's eyes without fear. We do not know, she said. And that is the problem. Explain. The human ships we are detecting are using technologies we do not fully understand. Their armor seems to be based on radiation-resistant principles, which means our energy weapons may be less effective than normal. Their shields show unusual properties that suggest they can absorb exotic particles. This makes sense if they developed them from working in hazardous environments, but it means our standard weapons may not work as expected. What about numbers? We have thousands of ships. They have thousands as well. We do not know their exact count because they are positioned in regions where sensors do not work well. That was intentional on their part. But even if we outnumber them, that does not guarantee victory if their ships are more durable than ours. The hegemon turned back to the star chart. What do you recommend? The admiral hesitated. I recommend we test them. Send one ship to one of their positions. See how they respond. Learn what we are facing before we commit to full conflict. They will see that as weakness. Perhaps, but attacking them without understanding their capabilities is foolish. And there is another consideration. She gestured to the star chart. Look at where they positioned themselves. These are not random locations. They are places that we need. Critical systems. But they are also systems that are difficult to assault. High radiation, unstable gravity, regions where coordinated fleet actions are nearly impossible. They chose their ground well. The hegemon nodded slowly. Very well. We will test them, but not at a minor position. We will test them at Zrath Prime. I want them to understand that we are not afraid. The admiral's crystalline face showed no expression, but her body language suggested disagreement. She said nothing. Orders were orders. 2 days later, the largest Zrathi battleship in the home fleet approached Zrath Prime's outer defensive perimeter. It was a vessel of impressive size, carrying weapons that could crack a moon and shields that had withstood direct hits from antimatter warheads. It was accompanied by a full squadron of support ships. Together, they represented the pride of Zrathi military engineering. They detected the human ship when they were 6 million kilometers from Zrath Prime. It was alone. A single vessel holding position between the Zrathi home fleet and their homeworld. It made no hostile moves. It simply sat there, waiting. The Zrathi admiral sent a communication. Human vessel, you are in violation of Zrathi sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon. The response was immediate. A human voice, male, with an accent the translator struggled to place. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Indomitable. We are in disputed space at the edge of your system. We have not entered your recognized territory. We are simply passing through. You are clearly not passing through. You are holding position. We are experiencing technical difficulties. It may take us some time to resolve them. It was an obvious lie. A provocation. The admiral knew it. The human captain knew she knew it. This was a test of wills. Final warning, human vessel. Withdraw or we will force you to withdraw. You may try. The admiral gave the order. Her flagship and 2 escort vessels opened fire. Energy weapons lanced across the void. Enough concentrated power to vaporize a small asteroid. The human ship vanished in a blaze of light. For a moment, the Zrathi crew cheered. Then the sensors cleared and the cheering stopped. The human ship was still there. Its shields had not even flickered. Impossible, someone whispered. The admiral studied the readings. Analysis? Their shields absorbed the energy completely. We barely scratched them. It is as if they are designed specifically to counter energy weapons. The admiral remembered what the humans had been doing for 20 years, maintaining fusion cores, working in radiation environments, transporting materials through space filled with exotic particles. They had learned to survive in conditions that would destroy normal ships, and they had built vessels that could do the same. Switch to kinetic weapons, she ordered. The Zrathi ships fired again. Solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. The human ship moved. It was fast. Faster than a ship that size should be able to move. It dodged some projectiles and intercepted others with small, precise bursts of point defense fire, and then it fired back. The human ship's weapons were not the massive energy cannons that most species favored. They were smaller, more precise. They fired projectiles that moved at incredible speeds, each one guided with perfect accuracy. The projectiles hit the Zrathi flagship's shields and punched through them like they were paper. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Hull breach, sections 40 through 43. Shields failing. They are using armor-piercing rounds with some kind of shield disruption technology. The admiral made a split-second decision. All ships withdraw now. The Zrathi fleet retreated. The human ship did not pursue. It simply resumed its position, waiting. The Admiral sent a priority communication to the hegemon. We cannot force them out. Not without significant losses. Possibly not at all. Their technology is specifically designed to counter ours. Someone has been studying our weaknesses for a very long time. The hegemon received the report in silence. Around him, his advisors exchanged worried glances. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He opened a communication channel to Ambassador Vasquez. "I wish to speak," he said. Elena's face appeared on the screen. She was in her quarters on the council station, calmly drinking what appeared to be coffee. "I am listening," she said. "What will it take for your ship to leave the Zrath Prime system?" "Nothing. It will leave when the 72-hour deadline expires and you have agreed to our terms. Until then, it stays. That ship could be destroyed? Yes, it could be. If you commit enough resources, you could overwhelm it. But it would cost you, and that is just one ship at one location. We have 49 other locations. Are you prepared to fight battles at all of them simultaneously?" The hegemon was silent for a moment. "You are bluffing. You cannot have enough ships to hold all those positions against determined assault. Perhaps. Would you like to find out? Each battle you fight will cost you ships, resources, lives, and at the end of it, even if you win, your economy will be in ruins, because while you are fighting us, no one is maintaining your infrastructure. No one is transporting your hazardous materials. No one is doing the work that keeps your civilization running." She leaned forward. "Let me be very clear, hegemon. We do not want war. We never wanted war. We wanted respect. We wanted equality. You refused to give it to us through diplomacy. So we are taking it through leverage. You can accept the new reality peacefully, or you can fight and lose everything. Those are your options. You dare threaten us. I am not threatening. I am explaining consequences. You made a choice when you voted to subordinate humanity. Now you must live with the results of that choice." The communication ended. The hegemon stood alone in his chambers, facing a reality he had never imagined. Humanity was not backing down. They were not afraid, and they had the capability to back up their demands. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Industrial accidents on Corthan worlds where human safety supervisors were no longer present. Power failures on Velix stations where human maintenance crews had departed. Trade disruptions on dozens of worlds where human transport was no longer available. The council economy was not collapsing yet, but cracks were forming, and there was something else. Something the intelligence services had discovered and kept quiet until now. The humans had not just pulled their workers from council space, they had also pulled their families, their civilians. Every human who had been living under council governance was gone. Trillions of people had been evacuated to locations unknown. That took planning, years of planning. It took infrastructure, transportation, coordination on a massive scale. Humanity had not just built a military fleet in secret. They had built an entire shadow civilization, hidden in the regions of space too dangerous for other species to explore. How long had they been planning this? Since first contact? Had humanity ever truly intended to integrate into council society? Or had they always been preparing to exist outside it? 6 months had passed since the crisis. The council chambers looked the same as they always had, with representatives from dozens of species arranged in circular tiers. But everything had changed. In the section where Earth's representative once stood at a subordinate podium, there was now a seat at the main council table. A seat equal to any other. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in that seat, surrounded by species that had once dismissed her as a servant. Some met her eyes with respect. Others looked away, still unable to accept the new reality. The Zrathi hegemon was gone, removed from power by his own people after the crisis ended. His replacement, a younger Zrathi named Krellin, sat across from Elena with an expression she had learned to read as cautious respect. The meeting was not about conflict today. It was about trade. Boring, ordinary trade negotiations, the kind of thing that happened every day in a functioning interstellar civilization. But even these mundane discussions carried the weight of what had happened. A Corthan representative proposed new shipping rates for antimatter transport. The rates were fair, generous even, nothing like the exploitative contracts humans had worked under before. Elena listened, reviewed the proposal with her staff, and agreed. The contract was signed with minimal negotiation. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Elena felt tired. After the session ended, she walked through the station's observation deck. The stars stretched out before her, countless points of light representing worlds and civilizations. Somewhere out there, humanity had built colonies and systems too hostile for other species. Somewhere out there, human ships still patrolled the regions they had claimed during the crisis. Most of those ships had returned to normal duties, but enough remained to send a message. Humanity could do this again if necessary. Ambassador Vasquez? Elena turned to find Krellin approaching. The young Zrathi moved with less arrogance than his predecessor, but she could still see the uncertainty in his body language. He was not sure how to treat her. Not enemy, not quite friend. Something new that the galaxy was still learning to define. Counselor Krellin, Elena said neutrally. Can I help you? I wanted to speak with you. Privately, if possible. He gestured to a quieter section of the observation deck. Elena nodded and followed. When they were alone, Krellin spoke quietly. I wanted to apologize. For what my people did. For what the Council did. The vote was wrong. The treatment of humanity was wrong. I see that now, Elena studied him. He seemed sincere. But sincerity was easy when the cost of insincerity was economic ruin. Do you see it because it was wrong? Or because we forced you to see it? Krellin flinched but did not look away. Both, perhaps. I cannot separate the two. But I am trying to understand. How did we not see what you were doing? How did we miss the signs? Because you were not looking, Elena said simply. You saw what you expected to see. Workers, servants, people too grateful for the opportunity to be included to ever challenge you. You never imagined we might be playing a longer game, were you? From the beginning? Elena considered the question. It was something she had thought about often during the long nights after the crisis. Not at first. When we made first contact, we genuinely wanted to join the Council. We wanted to be part of the galactic community. We took the dangerous jobs because we hoped it would prove our worth. But after a few years, we realized that no matter how hard we worked, we would never be seen as equals. So we adapted. You planned all of it? The fleet, the infrastructure, the coordinated withdrawal? The military planned it. They called it Protocol Exodus. A contingency in case things went badly. I did not know about it until I needed it. But yes, someone was planning. Someone was always watching and preparing. That is what humans do. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Krellin was quiet for a moment. The hegemon could not accept what happened. His pride destroyed him. I am trying not to make the same mistake. I am trying to build something better. But I do not know if it is possible. Too much damage has been done. Elena nodded slowly. It will not be easy. My people do not trust the Council anymore. Many humans want to cut all ties and build our own civilization in the regions we claimed. They see no benefit in maintaining relations with species that treated us as subordinates for 20 years. What do you want? It was a good question. Elena looked out at the stars and thought about it. I want what we always wanted. To be part of something larger. To share knowledge and culture and build something together. But I want it on equal terms. Not as servants. Not as workers doing jobs others find beneath them. As partners. Is that still possible? I do not know. That depends on whether the Council learned anything from what happened. Krellin nodded. Some did. Others are simply afraid and pretending to have learned. But change is happening. The Valix have reached out to human colonies to establish direct trade agreements. The Korthan are hiring human engineers at equal pay rates to help redesign their safety systems. Small steps, but they are steps. And the Zrathi? We are trying. Our industrial sectors are struggling without human workers. We tried to hire other species, but no one can work in the conditions that humans did. We are having to redesign our entire infrastructure. It is expensive and difficult. But perhaps it needed to happen. Perhaps we relied too much on others doing our dangerous work? Elena appreciated his honesty. Will you ask for humans to return? Eventually, yes. But not as we did before. We will offer real partnerships. Joint ventures where humans and Zrathi work together as equals. If your people are interested. We understand if they are not. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Elena spoke. I will be leaving this position soon. Returning to Earth. The military wants me back, and I find I miss home. A new ambassador will take my place. Someone younger. Less tied to the conflicts of the past. That might be good. A fresh start. Perhaps. But before I go, I want you to understand something. What humanity did, we did because we had no choice. You backed us into a corner and we fought our way out. But it cost us something too. We lost our innocence about the galaxy. We lost our belief that good intentions and hard work would be enough. We became harder, more suspicious, more willing to use force to protect ourselves. I am sorry for that. So am I. Because there was a version of this story where humanity and the Council built something beautiful together, where we learned from each other and grew stronger. That version ended with your vote. What we have now is functional, but it is not what it could have been. Krellin's crystalline features reflected the starlight. Is it too late to build that better version? I do not know. That is not my decision to make. That will be decided by the next generation, by people like the new ambassador who will take my place, by young Zarathi like you who are trying to be better than your predecessors, by humans who have to decide whether to forgive or to remember. She turned to face him directly. But I will tell you this. If the Council is serious about change, about treating humanity as equals, then there is a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. That will have to be enough. They parted soon after. Elena returned to her quarters and began packing. Her time on the Council station was ending. She would return to Earth, file her final reports, and retire from diplomatic service. She had done what needed to be done. Now others would have to build on that foundation or watch it crumble. On Earth, she met with the military commanders who had planned Protocol Exodus. They thanked her for executing it perfectly. They talked about what came next. The human colonies in hostile space were thriving. The fleet was powerful and growing stronger. Humanity had secured its independence and would never again be vulnerable to Council pressure. But in the civilian sectors, debates raged about what humanity should do with its newfound power. Some argued for complete isolation, build their own civilization and forget the Council existed. Others argued for engagement, using their leverage to push for real reforms in how the Council operated. Still others argued for something in between, maintaining necessary economic ties while building independent infrastructure. Elena watched these debates and realized she had no answers. She had been a soldier, then a diplomat. She had fought in wars and negotiated treaties, but she did not know how to build lasting peace between species that had fundamental disagreements about power and equality. That would be someone else's job. Someone smarter than her, or luckier, or simply more optimistic about what different species could achieve together. A year after leaving the Council, Elena received a message from the new human ambassador. There had been progress, small but real. The Council had established new oversight committees to review labor practices. They had created protections for species working in hazardous conditions. They had even begun recruiting mixed-species crews for difficult assignments, with humans training other species to work in conditions previously thought impossible. It was not enough. Not yet. But it was something. Elena also received messages from individual humans who had returned to Council space, not as subordinate workers but as equal partners in new ventures. A human Valix joint expedition to explore a previously inaccessible nebula. A human Korthan research team developing better safety equipment. A human Zrathi engineering firm redesigning fusion cores to be safer for all species.